Hello, I'm Kurt Greenbaum, the instructor for this course, The Business of Communications. As I've said in the syllabus, I'm defining communications somewhat narrowly for the purposes of our class. Because this is a journalism class, I want to focus on the business of communications regarding outlets that serve journalism. We have plenty of reading and writing in this class, but I want to also provide opportunities for some video learning as well. I've taught this class in past semesters, but I've built up a small collection of videos from Hangouts that I've done with other speakers. In this video, we'll hear highlights from two previous top editors from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Both served as editor-in-chief of the Post, first Ellen Soeteber, then Arnie Robbins, and both have worked at a variety of other newspapers during their career before they arrived in St. Louis. I should mention that the video from Ellen was recorded in September of 2014. Ellen died in June of 2016. I recorded the video of Arnie in September of 2015. We'll hear Ellen and Arnie talking about changes in the business model that supported newspapers, changes they've adapted to, and what their thoughts are about the future of journalism. First, I think it's worth hearing a little about the era Ellen came up in, when women were actually rare to see in big city newspapers.
Newspapers were published, physically published very differently than they are now, so this is going to make me feel really old. We had no computers in the newsroom. We had typewriters and pencil and papers, and we had these huge, big old printing presses that were not did nothing to protect the employees from inhaling ink all day long, which was not a good thing. So it was a very different operation. And that was only the second woman outside of World War II to be a copy boy at the Daily News, which was a major and very highly respected newspaper at the time. I really wanted to work at it.
Arnie also recalls a very different world in which newspapers were produced with substantially more people and much more crude technology.
It has changed a lot from I went to school to Northwestern in 1971, graduated in 75, and while it is mostly technology, when you think about it, at that era we had typesetters. So we would do a story, a reporter on a typewriter, then a person at this giant sort of mainframe computer was called a typesetter, then he or she, it was really mostly he's then, would type it in again, and then that would go to the composer. They'd print out a thing, basically, and then with glue it would get put onto a page. So yeah, it's all technology, but the world has changed so dramatically, that it's more than that also. But it's still journalism. It's all about, really, when you get right down to it, it's about distribution. How do you read your news? Do you read it on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, hard copy, through social media? All that's journalism. And you're right, Kurt, at least in what you were intimating, that the basic fundamentals still apply. The newspaper model was really based on reader eyeballs and advertising. The more eyeballs you got, the more advertising dollars you get. And, to be brutally honest, in some days, advertising dollars were easy. It was the old department stores would run 8 to 10 pages of ads. Sunday classifieds made a lot of money. In fact, they made something like 50% of the revenue of all advertising came on all of Sunday advertising, not just classified. But Sunday classified was huge.
Specifically cars, jobs, and autos, or real estate, yeah.
Okay, yep. And so newspapers made a lot of money, and that was their business model. At that same time, in the 80s, they were all becoming, one rich person in town would own a newspaper, and corporations were starting to buy them. They were becoming publicly traded. When you're publicly traded, you have to show growth year over year. For a while, it was a great, revenue stream. There was more money than what the rich guys had.
While we're talking about the old business model, Arnie also touches on a topic we will discuss at some length in this class, disruption. We'll talk about how the industry of journalism has been disrupted by new advances in technology, social media, and that sort of thing.
But eventually, they couldn't keep it up. And then during recessions, let alone disruption, and that started in the 2000s, there wasn't enough money. You couldn't show year-over-year growth. And when you get down to it, every business, is struggling with all of this now. Look at what Amazon has done to the Best Buys of the world and to bookstores and you name it. Every industry is going through this, not just the news industry. A period of disruption. So, we all at different levels understood it, but the ball kept moving. It's a moving target. So it's not something that you could just get your arms around.
And they had profit margins in the 20 and 30 percentiles, which is huge. Most businesses wouldn't ever be able to dream of having those percentiles, but they wanted us to be up in the 40s%, like TV stations were at the time. So they were even though we were making money, in the case of the Sun Sentinel, faster than Chicago could count it, and we had the highest profit margin in the company. I never got one extra nickel out of them. Every year was a fight to minimize cuts, not let the company, invest and grow. Papers did not invest in their futures. They just kept sucking profits out, so that when things started to collapse financially with the advertising market collapsing and all the competition from the digital media, what was called new media at the time, they had never invested in the future. Most newspapers didn't.
I think Ellen's last point is critically important to what we'll discuss in this class, the question about investing in the future of news. Still, some of the changes in the news industry were not necessarily within the control of media executives. The sources of revenue for news organizations were changing too.
It wasn't just the digital media. It was also that the main sources of revenue that have always been the biggest cash cows for newspapers also has been running away or dying off at the same time. And this was even before the recession, although the recession hastened some of this. If you look at it, department stores. There used to be competing department stores in every market, and there still are in St. Louis, so you're lucky. You still get at least a little bit of department store advertising. But newspapers used to have page after page after page, particularly in the front section, of ads from what's now Macy's, was Famous Bar in St. Louis, and Dillard's, and whoever else was there. And Macy's did not buy up every department chain in the country and change a famous brand such as Marshall Field's in Chicago to Macy's just so it could continue to advertise bras in every newspaper in the country. They did it so they could concentrate on TV ads, mailers, and a national strategy. So they're not advertising newspapers. So that was a huge, huge source of revenue for newspapers, and that ain't coming back.
The advertising model is really what changed. Newspapers never made a lot of money from circulation because we were always cheap. They'd be a quarter, then go up to 35 cents and 50 cents. A Snickers bar would be 75 cents on a vending machine then. So I think that was a real challenge. Now, with advertising, the advertising model has gone kaput.
Here are a few of Ellen's and Arnie's thoughts about the future of news.
But in news, and I think a lot of papers have started to do this, it's do great investigative reporting in your community. Stop covering everything because you cannot cover everything. Stop doing, when I was editor, especially early on and before when I was managing editor, there were many news stories that there'd be a big news story and then you'd write 12 to 15 inch process stories where the top 5 inches was new and the next 7 inches was rehash. Eventually we started to eliminate those because we had fewer people. But also they had limited value. So you got to pick your spots. You want high impact. So in newsrooms, I think it's that. I think it's to think about not just being digitally first. I think it's about using your phones first, maybe your tablet second, or maybe it's 1 and 1A, then laptops and desktops. but I would think really hard about, I think just so many people get so much information on their phones now that, how do I deliver the news on that the best way possible? I think a lot of the big changes have to come from other divisions. Advertising, I'm biased, of course, but I think there was a lot more innovation in newsrooms toward the future than in advertising departments or any other department, because there it was hold on to print advertising because it was huge dollars. Okay, I mean, I get that part of it. But I think now they're at the point where they have to really work with how can we do something that's going to be innovative, that's going to work for Sears, and that will work, that viewers will think, wow, that's cool. I might one day even stop in a Sears. So I think other divisions, there's a lot that they have to think about that, and I think a lot of it is the how much money a news organization spends. I said this before, but if you're spending so much money on circulation or so much money on printing presses, okay, how do you cut back on that? Because you don't want to cut 7 more reporters off the street anymore.
Oh, well, first of all, keep up like crazy on all the new media that come along. Make sure you're really facile. I don't mean you have to do code, but that you're really facile at understanding and using the digital media we have and the new forms as it comes along, and that you're creative in ways of using those different kinds of media to tell stories even better. So that the more familiar with you are with it, the better you'll be doing at having ideas for using it as part of your storytelling. And that's where I think that stuff's great, because it's opened up lots of new avenues for telling stories.
That's it for the highlights of these 2 interviews. If you'd like to hear more about what they had to say, the full videos are available on my YouTube channel. Talk to you more in our online classroom.